Welcome to Tell Me More, the all-steel podcast where design meets innovation and we explore the limitless potential of workspaces. In this exclusive series, we're peeling back the layers of workplace design. From the psychology of colors to the future of hybrid work, join us as we open doors to conversations with industry leaders, architects, and designers who redefine the modern workplace. This is Tell Me More, brought to you by Allsteel, because when it comes to designing the future, there's always more to discover.
Welcome to the Tell Me More podcast. I am your host, Taylor Morgan, a Senior Workplace Advisory Manager for Allsteel, and with me today is Tamar Ribnick, a Principal at HGA. Welcome, Tamar. Before we begin, I do want to pass it over to you for an introduction to the audience.
Yeah, thank you so much. No, I'm really excited to be here. My name's Tamar Ribnick, and as Taylor said, I'm a principal at HGA, which is a national architecture and design firm. I'm in our Minneapolis location, and my background is as an interior designer, but really my entire career has been focused on workplace interior design. So I'm part of our workplace group here, and I'm also focused on workplace strategy and just what we're seeing and the trends in the workplace right now.
Well, welcome. I know I'm excited to dive into this conversation, particularly around mentorship with you today. So mentorship traditionally has been a cornerstone of the workplace, as we all know, and it's been a place where leaders can come together to collaborate with professionals, share and exchange ideas. And many would say mentorship is the essential for our growth, both professionally and personally. And I'd have to agree. However, the dynamics of mentorship has evolved significantly in the recent years, including the spaces that we use for mentorship. So first, I'm curious to see how you have seen mentorship change and show up differently within the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say I love that word essential because I really, it's something I'm passionate about as well. I think the idea of mentorship and the power that we have as mentors and mentees to build relationships is just so foundational to the workplace and our growth in general. So I would say, how we looked at mentorship years ago was very much the in-person kind of coffees and back and forths, and now it's obviously shifted. But so what I see as maybe the biggest change right now, though, is if you look statistically, organizations are actually there's a 30% increase in formal mentoring initiatives, that organizations are allocating dollars and time and effort into the kind of formal initiatives rather than organic mentoring. And I will just say before we go a little bit further about that, so here we are, organizations putting the money into those formal mentorship programs, but the data suggests that formal programs are actually less effective than the organic mentoring initiatives that just happen either in person or happenstance, and that those relationships that are built. So do I see things changing? Yes, people see an importance. There's a significance to it, but it's different in how we're going after it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're seeing too. And I think, oftentimes mentorship, like you said, it's more important to have that organic structure now, to be a little bit more flexible, just given the hybrid work environment that we're in and how we're all meeting has changed, the environments have changed, etc. And so it's great that your clients are kind of having that forward thinking and wanting this to be more of an organic approach to mentorship. Curious if there are, or what conversations you're having in particular with your clients that shape that. And are they thinking of mentorship being more in person versus virtual, or is there kind of a combination of both with this environment?
Combination of both, and I would even say, I think we're a little bit ahead of the game in kind of identifying and using mentorship as part of the conversation to say, hey, we're actually seeing exactly what you said, less effectiveness with these programs. And when you've already invested in the programs, it's hard to say, okay, what's effective and what's not. And so I think it's hard to just say, hey, let's get rid of virtual mentorship, because there's been a lot invested. And I think you can get a lot of great relationships nationally and things like that. But we are still seeing that in-person organic mentorship is the most effective. And so to your point, designing spaces that facilitate those moments that matter, those happenstance interactions that create those moments to meet one another, to then create that mentorship. Once you have the foundation, yes, you could go both hybrid, virtual, and in person, but starting off from a place of natural interactions is really important. And so I would say, yes, we have essentially our clients, we look at really 3 different solutions. So whether there's remote, fully in person, or hybrid workplace, there's different techniques that we've been working with, different organizations that we've been trying out, and we've been seeing some good successes, which is great.
It's great. And
Yeah.
so when you're having those conversations and, thinking through the space types to support mentorship, what spaces have been essential for designing for those interactions? And it can, does it happen, as we know, it doesn't necessarily happen within the traditional setting anymore. It can happen in a cafe, it can happen out in the open. So what space types are really kind of coming to the forefront as you're designing?
Yeah, so really high level, I would just
Mhm.
say spaces that are welcoming, that are kind of accessible, that people are willing to feel comfortable to reach out. So we want spaces to feel welcoming and accessible. Furniture plays a huge part in that, whether it's areas of collaboration, whether there's kind of separate spaces, that water cooler or break and amenity space. So those are kind of generally high level. And then also it's the strategy. And I think you and I talked about some project examples in the past that we've just chatted about. But one that was really interesting for me was Prime Therapeutics is a company that we've worked with for a while, and they're actually a fully remote organization. So, funny story about them. Well, I don't know if they'd think it was so funny, but they finished their headquarters in 2018, right before the pandemic, brand new building, and then everything shut down, and
The
then
world's
they,
changed.
as the world, as it turns, I don't did you
Yeah.
notice the world changed,
The
right?
world
And
changed. Yes.
and as they, as an organization, decided to stay fully remote, but they had this whole headquarters. And then we say, okay, so for these remote organizations, does space really matter? And it does. And so they reached out to us and we started asking those questions, right? And they said, for a remote organization, what is it that we need? How do we create those mentorship opportunities? How do we make sure that we still maintain that engagement and culture and learning, right?
Right.
And so it was, so we started talking to them, and yes, they did look at reducing their square footage and they were able to lease out some of their space. But for the remaining space that they had, they said, okay, what we as an organization are doing is, yes, we're fully virtual, but we are bringing everyone together. So they were having these quarterly get-togethers where everyone was being flown in, and they were, paying for hotels and venues and conference centers. And even then, there were issues with connectivity and privacy. And so they said, what if could we take our existing location and turn it more into that hospitality or conferencing space?
Yeah.
And that's what we did. Is we said, okay, so yes, you're a virtual organization, but when you are together, let's make those moments matter. And so we
Yeah.
created a conference center, hospitality focus. So Taylor, back to what you're asking, is really a
Yeah.
hospitality focus, and
Absolutely.
designing for those kind of times where these are times when we're together. Let's
Mhm.
focus on making them comfortable and accessible. And so
Yeah.
even for a fully remote organization, space matters.
Mhm.
Even for a fully remote company where you're not together, it's saying when you are together, let's build a space that facilitates mentorship, growth, and learning. And so that's remote.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's all the others, but even that I think is really important to see.
Absolutely. And I think the core of that too is, they were being intentional and they still are being intentional. And they know that mentorship is probably a huge aspect to their company's success and the culture as well. So, creating those meaningful connections when they are together to hopefully then influence more of that organic meetups or times that the employees are wanting the mentorship throughout the year, that when there may not be, times that are in the office too. So I think that's great. Not a lot of companies, I think, are looking at it through the lens of a virtual meetup. So that's fantastic. So this hybrid environment that we're in, as we talked about, and I know we've talked a little bit about some of the challenges for interactions. Are there challenges when you were designing workspaces to create these mentorship areas? So, for example, since this company was fully, virtual, and they needed a spot to come together, an actual physical built environment. Are you seeing that more often, or are there other challenges within the workplace that clients are, coming to you and be like, we need to solve for this, but we only have X amount of space?
Yes, absolutely. I would say that remote is a more unique circumstance. I think it's wonderful, but more unique certainly. And hybrid is where we're seeing most companies land into some sort of hybrid um, workspace, right? Whether that means 3 days a week or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or just Wednesday, Friday. Um, Hybrid is certainly where we're seeing things land. And I would say what that comes what we're finding as successful solutions to facilitating mentorship for those is, and we've talked about this for many other workplace strategies, but it's no different here, is really providing that workplace choice to say when people come together, when they are in the office, those moments have to be meaningful. And so whether it is that kind of buzz in a coffee shop atmosphere, and we provide amenities to support kind of big gathering spaces or for people to communally congregate. Sometimes that takes away some of the pressure um, of reaching out to someone when there's all this noise around you, right? And so, can we
Right.
create buzz? Can we create beautiful spaces that people want to congregate around? Or even then, if you do feel a little bit more formal and you want to sit down with someone, those smaller, more intimate meeting spaces together. Um, when you're in the office, that you can have space to work, have space to just step away and non-reservable. And so that's been really helpful. I will say, sorry to throw out another example, but it feels relevant here.
Please
Um,
do. Yeah.
but General Mills, we did some work with them where they're going into or they have a hybrid work environment exactly like this. And the difference, and I think it is because they're a larger organization, but they had the hybrid work environment that we've been working on for their single floors and for their individual business units. And that is everything that I just talked about. But what they did that was interesting as well is they have, as a headquarters, their main street or their space that's accessible for all of their employees. And they did a full renovation of that space with really one of the main drivers was how do they create those interactions? How do they create an accessible area for all of their employees? And it has been wildly successful.
That's great.
We have, yeah, and
Mhm.
they have, a coffee shop. They have a little like a lunch restaurant area, and then all this beautiful just variety of seating, bringing in natural daylight. People want to hang out there, and it doesn't matter what your business unit is. It doesn't matter if you're in finance, if you're in HR. You see everyone, and there's some value in breaking down those barriers and those silos where everyone's coming together. So that's
Yeah.
been different, and they have that opportunity as a
Yeah.
larger organization.
Yeah. It creates buzz. It creates trust and
Yes.
comfortability as well. It, encourages others to maybe meet and to feel okay with meeting outside of their desks as well, and having those social elements as well, which can lead to that organic mentorship moment. But you mentioned a few times about these, interactions being meaningful, and I think that is key. I really do think that with the environment that we're in today, our interactions have to be thoughtful, meaningful, and really intentional to bring us together. And it's as you're probably having conversations with your clients too, but the younger generations right now really value being in the office, having that mentorship, and just listening to maybe the person next to them to get that organic learning opportunity. And I think the more that we design these spaces to support those activities, the more successful we're going to be with encouraging things like mentorship and socialization and even some innovation as well, which we all
You're,
hope, kind of comes out of
you're,
this
you're
hybrid
so right.
environment too. Yep.
I sometimes call that learning by osmosis, right? And
Yes.
that's
Yep.
part of it too,
Hmm.
is saying that when, even I think it's right sizing our neighborhoods of workspaces
Yep.
so that there's enough people there that there's buzz, but you don't want a sea of empty desks with one person over here and one person at the other end of the room. Then you lose that value of the osmosis. And I've heard people say, well, it's too noisy. And I do think we want to address the fact that there are some pain points of coming back to the office. But I think that's where, in a hybrid work environment, we have to prioritize to say, well, when you're in the office, it's back to that moments that matter. It's back to making those moments count. And so, yes, you might not have that perfectly silent work environment, but that's okay because from the spirit of mentorship and growth and development of an organization, which is that's long-term success right there, right? Like not if I had a quiet work day, it's how have we grown our people, right? Our people are our most important asset. And so saying when we're together, making those moments of learning by osmosis or interaction effective, that's going to be what's going to lead all of our all of us to
Yeah.
long-term success.
Absolutely. So do you think that this shift in mentorship will affect us in a way that it does push us, it does allow us to grow more and kind of progress in our careers? Or do you think, not necessarily having everyone in office all the time is going to give us a little bit of a shortcoming, I suppose, on the mentorship? Or does it come back to just being more intentional and really planning out our interactions throughout the day?
Y- You're not going to like this.
Oh, no.
I think we're at kind of a cliff where, quite frankly,
Agree.
the past few years, I would say we were unsuccessful in our mentorship. There is some data that shows, as people return to office, we have senior leadership that's coming. We have really those new entering the workforce generation coming into the office, and it's that middle level that really knows how to do their job. So why bother coming in? And so for a while there, we're not coming into the office, and so we've actually, I think, organizations as a whole nationally haven't done our best. We've been doing well from a productivity standpoint, and that's great because the people that know how to do their jobs are doing their jobs. But as time goes on and as we start, elevating to the next level, we need to be backfilling and we need to be really intentional about that. And so I would say, unfortunately, I don't think that's been successful to date in a fully virtual environment. I do think, though, that organizations, I know we see that from this 30% increase in mentoring initiatives, that we know that they see that organizations see this cliff, that they are investing in mentorship and therefore also need to be investing in their spaces so that we can really facilitate these organic growth. Because if we can't get our employees engaged, if we can't get people wanting to be a part of a team and wanting to learn, we're not going to go anywhere fast. But I do think, that sounds such a downer sentence right there.
No, I mean, it's
But
very true. I think, one of the things that came out of the pandemic too is the lack of innovation, and culture is suffered as well. And I think this all,
Mhm,
everything that we've spoke about kind of boils up into that. And
mhm.
mentorship really is at the key of that, and or just having those conversations in the office that you don't get when you are virtual. I think that has hurt us coming out of the pandemic.
Mhm,
So I do agree with you.
mhm.
There's opportunity
Well,
for
and I
us
think
all
it's so
to kind of
funny.
think differently.
And it does all connect, right?
Right. Mhm.
The culture, the engagement, the productivity, innovation. And when you do think about it, I think you're spot on. And that's actually something I love about this whole series that H&I is doing is focusing on mentorship and saying that that is foundational and it impacts all these other facets. Um, it, Once you start looking at mentorship, it really feels like it begins to solve all these other problems. So if we can
It
start
does.
there, it
Yes.
really, what's that word? It radiates, right?
Yes.
Out
Mhm.
further, which I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So has there been a particular space that you've talked or you've designed with a client that they were like, this has been a perfect space for mentorship or a perfect space for socialization? Has there been any of those space types that were kind of like an aha moment that solved the problem?
Yeah, so I think actually General Mills was really successful, but another
Mhm.
one that I think something we really haven't we've touched on a little bit, but of that idea of employee engagement and equity and employees feeling like, again, accessible and that accessibility component. Um, we worked on a project in Minneapolis for it's a small company. It's called IDC Springs, and they're a family-owned business, and they make garage door springs, which who knew, right? That was a business, but it exists. And what I loved about them was so their office is connected to their manufacturing facility. And their big push was to say they wanted there to be equity between their office employees, their manufacturing employees. And they're actually a fully in-person organization. And so, in many ways, some of the issues that we talked about with remote and hybrid aren't relevant here from that
Yeah.
technology component. But I do think it was really critical for them to say, let's connect back to what we do. Let's connect to all of our people, and it makes us stronger. And so, for instance, we did a lot of things to really try to connect with their manufacturing and office employees. So, for instance, there's only one entry that everyone walks through. There's not two separate entries. Um, and also, and this was the real different one, is there we talk about those social spaces where people come together. So their main primary break or amenity space, um, work cafe space, it's in the manufacturing facility. And all of the office employees have to leave the office, go through the manufacturing facility to
That's
get
right.
there. And that
Mhm.
was intentional. That was for them to, again, back to accessibility, making sure that everyone is visible to one another.
Yeah.
Even there's access to an outdoor patio. They have a big garage door because they're,
It's
garage door
awesome.
springs
Mhm.
out to this patio space. And I will say their level of employee retention and engagement has been extremely dramatically positive. They
That's
have
great.
had just wonderful statistics on
Mhm.
retention as well. And that is part of mentorship when you think about it, is
Agreed.
making sure that your
Mhm.
employees are engaged and that they want to stay, um, and that they want to grow the people around them. So I think that idea of equity and accessibility is paramount, and that was something really successful in that project.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's key to all of this, right? We want to be able to feel comfortable approaching our leader or our mentor. We want to have that accessibility and know that if we have a problem or need to just talk about something, that we have access to them. And I think sometimes that's where the challenge is if you are a virtual employee. Not to say that it can't happen and it doesn't happen, but it's about the equity portion as well to it. So
Yes.
how can we create equity when we may not always be together in the same physical space? But no, I love that. I think that that's great. It interconnects the manufacturing team and the actual workers within the workplace too, and allows them to kind of give a lens into each other's worlds, and maybe allows them to collide and have organic conversations that they wouldn't necessarily have if they didn't
And
have that
realize
interaction.
that we're all like we're all here for the same reason, right?
Right. Mhm.
And to just have a successful organization. And we're
Yeah,
all like I think bringing that humanity back to it. And again,
absolutely.
I mean, I'm a little biased, but I truly believe that space has an impact. How we experience space is so important. And we, as just the design community, have such an opportunity, and I would even say a responsibility, right,
Agreed.
to identify this. It is an opportunity to say, okay, I'll soapbox here, but I've heard the word collaboration for so long, and it's true. Collaboration does lead to innovation. Collaboration does do so much, but if we just shift it ever so slightly and look at things from a lens of mentorship, both the mentee and the mentor, right?
Mhm.
We can. I believe, solve a lot of problems,
Yep.
which is pretty cool.
I agree. And I think what you just mentioned with the mentor and the mentee is also important to bring up and talk about, because it's, as a mentor, and I know you've been a mentor as well, and it's something that we both really enjoy and it's a passion of ours. However, I've also learned a lot from my mentee as well. I think
100%.
that exchange of knowledge, no matter the age, no matter the gap between your profession, I think there's still a lot to learn and to talk about, um, and to gather from one another. So I think that's what I'm probably most excited for, as we, start to really think about designing spaces that are intention, that really lead us to more of these mentorship interactions, is being able to have more interactions with individuals, because I think that, at least for me, it's lacked a little bit. And so I think being intentional of how we're coming together is going to be key. So everything you said has been great and right on point, and I think it is something that, mentorship is going to, or something that's going to lead into having greater mentorship opportunities and interactions. So as we kind of wrap up the conversation here, is there anything else you want to explore on mentorship, or, something that you've seen or heard that you want to dive into?
You know, the only thing, and I think actually this mentor mentee comment that you noted is so important. I think just doubling down on finding ways to connect with one another is so important. I think sometimes mentors don't even realize that they are a mentor until they're, deep into it. And I
Yes.
think that that's actually beautiful. I think it's
Mhm.
wonderful. And so, um, kind of constantly putting ourselves out there and making ourselves accessible, making sure that we're, utilizing these spaces that we have, and that we're providing spaces for interaction, for moments that matter, and then we ourselves, remembering the responsibility that we have and the power that we have, even if it feels crazy. How can I be a mentor? Really, you are, just by showing up, just by taking
Absolutely.
those times to pause. And so,
Yep.
like I said, it's something I'm passionate about. I care about it. I think
Same.
it makes a big difference. I know, and that's what I
Do.
love. I love
Yeah.
when we get to talk
Yeah.
about these
Yeah.
conversations, right? I think it can be really
Right.
impactful.
Absolutely. And I credit a lot of my mentors for, being in the position I am today too. They've helped,
Hmm.
both professionally and personally. And I think that, like we said at the beginning of the conversation, it's essential to our growth. It's essential to the company, the culture, and all of it. So the more we can empower and create spaces that allow for it, I think we're all going to be a little bit in a better place for sure. But
I love
well,
it.
thank you, Tamar. This has been great. Thank you all for listening to the Tell Me More podcast, and stay tuned for more episodes.
And that brings us to the end of another fascinating episode of Tell Me More. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of design and innovation. If you're hungry for more insights and stories, make sure to subscribe to Tell Me More on your preferred podcast platform. As we sign off, remember that the conversation doesn't end here. Connect with us on social media at AllSteel and share your thoughts, questions, or even your favorite moments from the podcast. We love hearing from our engaged and curious audience. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll continue exploring the Design to Do More philosophy. Until then, thanks for listening.